Rain stung the cracked windshield as a battered sedan crawled up the hill toward the Whitford estate, wipers slapping frantically, headlights like trembling eyes in the dusk. Inside, Marion Whitford clutched the steering wheel until her knuckles went white, pulse hammering. Every mile between her and the sun she'd raised alone feeling longer than the last. She had rehearsed some hopeful greeting, a gentle apology for arriving without calling. But the moment the iron gate slid open and the mansion lights flared, that fragile speech dissolved into mist. 5 years of mounting hospital bills, eviction notices, and factory double shifts had taught her one truth: politeness rarely persuades privilege. Still, she was his mother. Surely Andrew would remember. She hardly recognized him when he stepped onto the veranda, tall, sharp-suited, eyes hard as newly minted coins. The boy who once begged for bedtime stories now carried the impatience of a man who believed time itself owed him interest. The second he saw the rust-flecked sedan coughing smoke near his imported sports car, his jaw tightened. Marion opened the driver's door and stood, smoothing a thrift store raincoat over a dress 2 sizes too large. She mustered her warmest smile. "Andy, honey, don't call me that." His voice knifed the night air. He didn't approach, didn't even glance at her weather-beaten luggage strapped with twine. "This is a private residence. You need to leave." Words tumbled out. Lost job, rising rent, the ankle she'd sprained lifting crates, the landlord who wouldn't wait. She mentioned the memory of their tiny apartment where she'd stitched his science fair volcano costume and the promise he'd made at graduation. "Mom, when I make it big, you'll never worry again." She spoke quickly, terrified the porch lights would switch off mid-sentence. But Andrew's face remained eerily still, as if carved from the same marble pillars framing the doorway. "Those were childish fantasies," he said. "I'm running a tech venture now, investors in Tokyo, regulators breathing down my neck. Optics matter. A bankrupt relative sleeping in my guest wing is not part of the narrative." Rain pattered like applause for cruelty. Marion tasted metal on her tongue. She tried to apologize for inconveniencing him, promised she would find somewhere else tomorrow if she could just rest tonight. But Andrew's security chief already approached, whispering that a hotel voucher had been arranged. A hotel, on the industrial fringe known for hourly rates and broken locks. She refused politely. That tiny defiance lit something vicious in Andrew's eyes. "Then don't say I offered nothing," he snapped. "Here's 200 in cash. Bus fare is 30. Go anywhere that keeps you out of headlines." He stuffed bills into her hand, turned, and vanished beyond the art glass doors. The deadbolt's metallic thunk echoed across the stone patio, ringing louder than thunder. Marion stood in the downpour until security guided her back to the sedan, eyes stinging from more than rain. She did not drive away immediately. Instead, she sat motionless, engine idling, remembering Andrew at 12, cheeks jelly smudged from birthday cake, telling her she was his whole world. The ache twisted into resolve, so fierce it startled her. If she truly was no longer part of his story, she would write a better one without him. Until the day he begged to be included again. 5 years later, downtown skylines glittered with billboards bearing Andrew's face. Apex Eye, seeing the future before it happens. His predictive analytics platform courted governments, markets, celebrities. In conference halls, reporters hailed him as the boy genius who rose from poverty. The biographical footnote of a single mother dying in obscurity went unverified. For Marion, survival had demanded reinvention. She had taken the $200, invested in online coding courses during graveyard shifts, parlayed temp gigs into a junior developer role, then hustled sideways into cybersecurity, a field hungry for relentless learners. Month by month, she absorbed encryption theory, threat modeling, social engineering defense. She studied Apex Eye's patents, memorized names on cap table spreadsheets, learned the board members' coffee preferences and asset portfolios. Compassionately raised instincts made her lethal at reading patterns. What once rocked a cradle now cracked cipher keys. By year 3, she built Quiet Bloom, a consultancy specializing in pruning digital footprints for philanthropists who preferred their benevolence invisible. Quiet Bloom thrived quietly. Its client list included financiers who quietly bankrolled venture capital heavyweights. Some shared golf with Andrew. She smiled each time an ApexI exec praised Quiet Bloom in group chat. Unaware the founder they mocked late at night was the woman who had packed Andrew's school lunches. Revenue climbed, and Marion kept her name off outward filings, trusting a lattice of shell holdings and proxies. Year 4 delivered opportunity disguised as scandal. A whistleblower leaked that ApexI's flagship algorithm skewed credit scoring models against low-income applicants. Public outrage ignited, regulators circled, and investors whispered about leadership lacking mature oversight. Marion listened from the wings, buying minority shares each time tweets crashed the price. She secured proxy votes through friendly funds, stitching control bit by tiny bit. Her attorney, a former social worker turned corporate shark, drew acquisition roadmaps like war generals draft invasions. By early spring of year 5, ApexI bled cash from lawsuits and a disastrous keynote demo where the AI had misidentified a congressman as deceased. Marion executed the final strike, a tender offer to purchase controlling interest at a premium, financed by Quiet Bloom profits and a syndicate of impact investors salivating at the narrative. Wronged mother rescues flawed tech for social good. Board members, fearful of further devaluation, capitulated within 48 hours. Papers were signed in a glass-walled skyscraper overlooking the same hilltop mansion where Andrew still hosted chandeliered galas. He didn't know the buyer's name until the ink dried, because her representatives called her Emmy Bloom. The moment he discovered the initials stood for Marion Elise, he sprinted from the boardroom looking ashen, as if seeing a ghost who could issue pink slips. Marion scheduled her first all-hands meeting at ApexI's atrium, streaming it globally. Employees gathered, confused, some resentful. Cameras locked onto a slim woman in an ivory suit, silver hair pinned back, posture uncompromising. She thanked them for their groundbreaking work, acknowledged recent missteps, promised transparency, then invited the founder, Mr. Whitford, to join her on stage. Andrew approached slowly, applause polite but thin. Marion faced him, voice calm, yet carrying the sting of winter wind. She recounted her eviction night in neutral tones, never raising volume, yet the silence between sentences pressed on eardrums harder than bass drums. She revealed how his rejection had forged Quiet Bloom, how that company now held 61% voting power, and how it intended to recalibrate ApexI to protect, not exploit, vulnerable populations. Finally, she handed Andrew a sealed envelope. "It's your new contract," she explained. "A 5-year term as Chief Empathy Officer. Salary $1 annually, with bonuses payable only in volunteer hours logged at shelters ApexI will fund. Accept, and you can help mend what you broke. Decline, and your non-compete clause activates. I own the rights to every idea you scribbled since college, including the napkin sketches in your dorm desk. Choose wisely, son." Gasps rippled across the atrium. Andrew's lips parted, searching for words that wouldn't come. He opened the envelope. The contract wording was precise, the legal trap elegant. Camera drones hummed overhead, broadcasting humiliation to millions, including the investors he once impressed by abandoning the mother who'd sacrificed everything for him. He glanced at her, not at the formidable CEO she had become, but at the woman whose stories had lulled him to sleep. Tears blurred his eyes. He took the pen Marion offered and signed, voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Mom." Marion gave a single nod, then addressed the employees again, pivoting smoothly into a rollout plan for ethical data governance, leaving Andrew to reckon with the applause that thundered for her, not him. Weeks passed. Andrew spent mornings scrubbing graffiti in underfunded schools, afternoons counseling coders on bias mitigation, nights drafting apology emails to consumers flagged unfairly by his own invention. Marion watched without gloating. Some evenings they shared quiet coffee in the executive lounge overlooking twinkling city streets. Conversation came haltingly. Memories of burnt pancakes, the time she traded sleep to sew him a prom suit when money was tight. He listened, head bowed, understanding how success built on someone else's exhaustion curdles into shame. In quarterly earnings calls, journalists asked Marion why she didn't simply fire Andrew. She replied that revenge is efficient, but redemption compounds interest. Wall Street called it sentimental. Year-end profits called it genius. ApexI rebranded as InsightRoot, open-sourced key modules, and partnered with nonprofit lenders to restore credit to communities once harmed. Share price tripled. Consumers forgave faster than pundits predicted. On the first anniversary of the acquisition, Marion invited employees to a renovated auditorium lined with photographs of ordinary heroes. Teachers, nurses, crossing guards. Andrew, now leaner, eyes softer, stepped to the podium unannounced and addressed the workforce he'd once ruled by fear. "I believed brilliance excused cruelty," he said. "I thought speed mattered more than care. My mother showed me that code written without compassion corrupts like rust. Today, InsightRoot funds clinics, scholarships, small business microloans, and none of that happened because of my algorithms. It happened because someone I discarded refused to discard me." He turned, pressed a handwritten thank you note into Marion's palm, and bowed. The room erupted. Marion's throat tightened, not with triumph, but with a tenderness she'd safeguarded since the rain-soaked night of eviction. She didn't share the note's contents, but insiders learned it promised tithe of future personal earnings to an endowment for single parents returning to school. Outside, reporters asked what's next for the mother who bought her son's empire. Marion smiled. "I didn't buy a company. I bought back a conscience. The ROI on that is infinite." Cameras flashed, headlines blasted, and social media crowned her the patron saint of poetic justice. Quiet Bloom's client inquiries spiked 300%, but Marion paused new business for a month to finish her degree in behavioral economics. Dream deferred for decades, but never abandoned. One spring afternoon, she drove the same battered sedan, now restored and painted robin egg blue, to the Hilltop Mansion. The gate recognized her license plate and opened. Andrew greeted her at the door, apron dusted with flour, experimenting with the apple cinnamon muffins she used to bake. They walked the manicured lawn, discussing an upcoming hackathon for at-risk youth. She noticed lines of sincerity etched beside his eyes, evidence of nights spent listening rather than commanding. As the sun dipped, Andrew placed a wooden box on the patio table and slid it toward her. Inside lay the $200 in weathered bills, preserved under glass, framed by a brass plate engraved, "Seed Capital, for every story worth telling." Marion exhaled shakily, cheeks damp, finally releasing the weight of 5 rainy years. They didn't speak of forgiveness. The gesture spoke louder. She held the box like a sacred text, marveling at how paper, ink, and memory could germinate forests of change. Time moved gently after that. Board meetings included moments of gratitude before metrics. Code reviews opened with user impact stories. InsightRoot's office walls displayed metrics for lives assisted beside revenue. Competitors scoffed, regulators applauded, consumers noticed. Journalists pinned think pieces on the rise of maternal capitalism. Some critics accused Marion of orchestrating theatrical revenge. She let results answer. At a global ethics and AI summit, Marion delivered a keynote detailing tactical empathy, treating stakeholders as narrative protagonists rather than statistical noise. She closed with a slide of the farmhouse she lost and the mansion gate that once denied her. URI coded at the bottom read /OpenGate Scholarship. The audience scanned in real time, and crashed the donation portal with enthusiasm. Years later, when Marion retired to teach at a community college, Andrew assumed CEO duties with a board full of educators, ethicists, and community organizers. Every new hire heard the cautionary tale on day one. Brilliance without gratitude calcifies. Humility multiplies impact. Marion, now Professor Whitford, assigned freshman essays exploring the economics of empathy. She drove the Robin Egg sedan to campus, refusing a chauffeured company car. Students found her approachable, unaware she once outmaneuvered venture capital titans. One blustery November evening, she returned to her modest townhouse and discovered Andrew on the porch holding a casserole and a dog-eared copy of the picture book she'd read him during Fevers, The Brave Acorn. They shared dinner, laughter, and quiet reflection on threads of fate. A storm, a gate, $200, and a mother who turned heartbreak into the architecture of a better world. When he left, a note remained on the kitchen counter. All repayment plans complete. Only interest left is love. Marion pinned it to her fridge beside student thank you cards. She realized the circle had closed, not in neat symmetry, but in rich, spiraling layers of growth. Her heart felt like an orchestra finally resolving to a major chord after years of dissonance. And so the story that began with eviction ended with invitation, proving that sometimes the most viral plot twist isn't revenge at all, but the quiet revolution of character. The algorithm of the human heart, once debugged, scales kindness faster than any startup ever could.